What's going on, everybody? It's Tom. Welcome back to another patch preview. Today we're looking at 2.5a, the first of the 2.5 cycle. Pretty excited for this one. Read over a little bit, and it seems like a really solid patch. A lot of excellent changes coming up, so let's just get straight into it, shall we? And see what's happening on the Wild Rift. Come with me. Here we are. It's the spookiest season, but we brought back up. Caitlyn and Jace are headed to Wild Rift to add some firepower from downtown, and you can give them a helping hand in the Hextech Heist event in a few days' time. We're taking a look at some of 2.5's most reliable champ picks and putting them back in line. We've also got some key changes coming to the Last Whisper family of items and buffing up some key magic resist mainstays. This patch marks the last major balance patch for the Horizon Cup. Very exciting stuff. Wild Rift's first international tournament. As such, we'll be keeping the game stable for the next few weeks in order to give our first crop of pros time to practice and prepare for the matches ahead. The future will be bright. Welcome to patch 2.5a. Here we go, 2.5a. Very exciting stuff. So, new champions. Caitlyn is coming. If you're not familiar with the PC equivalents, Caitlyn is a marksman, traditionally played in the Dragon Lane. Very long range, traditionally, extremely long range. The sniper rifle has a scaling passive, basically wherever she hits every 7 times, she does bonus damage with a crit on her next attack. And yeah, she places down traps essentially, has a net to escape and ensnare foes, and she's all about spacing and playing at max range. Her ultimate is she targets a champion from far away, blasts them with a massive sniper shot for huge damage. Pretty cool champ. Not super crazy mechanically or has a really hard to understand kit or anything, but fun to play. Very smooth, pretty good addition I think overall. Jace, on the other hand, way more complex. Jace's kit involves a transform mechanic. Instead of having a traditional ultimate, his ultimate transforms his weapon between a hammer and a cannon, and he basically has 2 separate ability setups for each weapon type. So he gets his ultimate at level 1, and then he can transform between the ranged and the melee form, and he gets different skills depending on which form he's in. So he's a really intricate and high mechanical champion with a lot of options. A lot of fun to play. Traditionally more of a Baron laner or a mid laner. Has been played in the Dragon Lane here and there. Could maybe be a jungler in Wild Rift because of he has quite a lot of AoE in his toolkit, so definitely could be potentially played as a carry jungler. We could see it. Overall, I think he's a very interesting champ. Very high mechanical prowess, lots of poke damage, but also has really solid all-in as well. And he's he can get up close and personal, do a lot of damage. Yeah, pretty interesting champion. Kind of depends on the strength of his numbers as to how strong he'll be. Skins, we got Bewitching Janna coming, looking very cute. Underworld TF. This skin has traditionally been very broken in PC. Underworld TF. I think it's because it's pick a card. The coloring is a little bit different due to the nature of the skin's aesthetic. Might be a thing in here. I think also his wild cards are quite hard to see. The design is very small and not very consistent with the hitbox, so traditionally it's been a very broken skin. I think it's almost been banned in competitive PC a few times, but it's managed to keep through, so keep that in mind, I guess. And Underworld Wukong is coming, as well as Jace, Brighthammer, and Headhunter Caitlyn on November 9th when the champions release. It's a pretty cool Caitlyn skin. I don't really remember the Jace one. I think it's not that crazy. So accessories coming. We got I guess this is Underworld TF. I have seen Underworld TF and it looks a little bit different, I think, than it does on PC. So I think maybe they've redesigned the skin a little bit. So clearly got an avatar here for the Jace Caitlyn event. That's pretty cool. And this cute little kitty pumpkin as a bauble, and some secret stuff. Secret for the secret event. November 7th, eh? What could that be? You'd have to have some sort of arcane power if you're able to, discover what that could be ahead of time. Hextech Heist is also coming on November 9th, so this is the Jace Caitlyn event. Probably get a free champion from it. It's traditionally how it's done, so that's very cool. So champion changes. Due to the impending Horizon Cup, this will be Wild Rift's last major balance patch for a few weeks to keep the game stable for our first international tournament. So we can expect to be playing on 2.5a probably about a month, because it will be the 21st that Horizon Cup finishes. I guess they don't have access to any tournament realm functionality yet, so they'll be playing on live the whole time. So yeah, I wouldn't expect any patches again, I guess, for about a month. So overall, I think the game's in a fairly stable state, so this won't be too drastic. And I think a lot of these changes are pretty good. It should help tighten the game up a bit. No drastic reworks or buffs in here, so nothing to worry about in that regard. Akshan, players have gained mastery over Akshan, has been revealed as a stronger pick than he appeared on previous patches. We like keeping the bulk of Akshan's power in medium range combat, so we're siphoning a small amount of power out of his ultimate to make it a little harder to pick off enemies after fights for easy revives. Basically just lowering the AD ratio on his execute, the missing health factor of his ultimate. I think it's a pretty solid change. I've definitely had a few key Akshan ultimates that have been a little bit crazy. So yeah, I'm not too surprised to see this get lowered a little bit. I don't think it's that big a deal. It's kind of just one of those changes that, yeah, it hits his numbers a bit, but it's not a substantial part of his kit. It's just kind of extra utility / quality of life that he doesn't really need. He isn't super reliant on it. It just lowers some of those niche cases where his ultimate does crazy amounts of damage. I think Akshan's in a really good spot. Probably a little bit underplayed, but as usual, the problem with Akshan isn't necessarily Akshan himself. It's that the AP picks around him don't really exist to allow you to play AD mid laners super consistently. There's some champions you can play bot lane, you know, that are AP, but overall it's a little bit harder to get like a ranged AD mid laner consistently draftable. So he's just kind of more of a niche option, but I think he's in a solid place and people just need to experiment with him a bit more personally. I like him quite a lot. Darius is one of the most dominant picks in Elite play for quite some time to promote champion diversity in the Baron lane, reducing his ability to heal away damage during trades and skirmishes. So just lowering the heal on Decimate. I think this is a pretty solid change as well. Oops, apologies. I think this is pretty cool to see. Again, it's just a thing where, like, yeah, Darius is a bit strong. You don't want to nerf him into the ground. So they hit something that's not super substantial, much like the Akshan change. It will be noticeable. There will be times where, you know, you wouldn't get away with something that you would normally, but overall, it's probably not going to kill the champion. So I think it's a pretty good change. Galio. While Galio's support presence was recently nerfed, we're seeing him get stronger in mid due to the input buffering changes, how his abilities interact with Flash and Proto Enchant. This is to do with basically his third ability. You can now extend it with Flash or Proto, giving a lot more versatility. In patch 2.5, this time we're further chipping away at his ultimate to address his omnipresence and dominance in pro play. So plus 10 to 20 seconds per rank. I think it's a pretty good change as well. Just limits it. Again, you know, I like the scope of these changes, or I like the idea of these changes where they're just hitting aspects of the kit that aren't necessarily core to the character. They just weaken some of the additional strengths that they don't necessarily need to rely on, but are noticeable, you know? Galio's late game ultimate, it's up, you know, potentially even twice a team fight with enough ability haste. But now that's going to be a very rare occurrence. You need to be more, you know, cautious with the ultimate in the early game when it's a longer cooldown, thinking a bit more about it. And I think this kind of change is really good. Graves has spiked in both power and popularity over the last few patches as the metagame has become extremely favorable for him, taking away some of the defenses he gets for free in order to limit how easy it is for Graves to farm up a few items and carry without fear of dying. So he's getting the classic 40 HP base nerf. I think this is fine because he's a ranged champion. Does need to be a bit squishier, losing some of his armor per level and losing some of his base mana regen. So yeah, this will definitely make him squishier in lane. The thing about Graves right now is he's traditionally more of a Baron / mid laner than he is a jungler, and these changes definitely hurt his early laning where he already needs to play very aggressive and very on the line to get consistent leads. So for matchups that are very bursty, for example, Graves into Renekton might be a matchup that you'd want to play kind of normally, because, you know, if you play Graves really aggressively and kite really effectively, you can stay on Renekton's range. If he does all in you, you have a lot of base stats. Anyway, and if you've done enough damage beforehand, you can just run him down afterwards and kill him, right? But now that Renekton burst is a lot scarier because you have 40 missing base HP, you have less armor per level. Now it's a little bit more dangerous. The line is a lot closer, you know, of like how aggressive you could be on Graves without just getting killed. So this definitely does mitigate that kind of Graves laning style. Like I say, Graves jungle isn't very popular anyway, but I guess it is a slight nerf to him when he ganks. But realistically, Graves jungle isn't going to feel these changes very much because it doesn't take any damage in the jungle anyway. Worst case would be like maybe he struggles with some duels, maybe at a crab, for example, like a Lee Sin matchup, a little bit easier to get him lower HP, so Lee Sin's execute is a bit more effective, but overall I don't think it'll affect too many of those matchups, and it's more of a Baron lane oriented change. Kai'Sa's been a dominant pick and highly skilled play as well as coordinated play. We're cutting down on her trading power, burst, and wave clear by lowering the base damage on her Cathy and Rain, but leaving her scaling intact so she can still perform her role later in the game. So base damage per missile going down by 10 per rank, and the max damage therefore is going down by 22.5 at every rank on a single target. So I think this is a great change as well. Once again, you know, hitting a key champion in the meta, been very present for a very long time, hits them in a way that probably won't knock them out of the game, but it will feel different. You know, you'll feel Kai'Sa's trading is a little bit weaker in the other game. You know, one-shot execute on a single target when she just duels somebody won't be as strong, should be a little bit weaker without items. I think it's a pretty solid change, should lower Kai'Sa's presence a little bit. Lucian is still underperforming in the Dragon lane despite recent buffs, so we're increasing the damage of the culling to bring him in line with other marksmen, plus 5 per rank on culling. Actually a very substantial change. I would prefer to see them write the total damage, because I'm pretty sure culling shoots like, what, 22 bullets? At rank 1? 18 bullets? That's a lot of damage, man. That's 5 is a lot. Like, you see 5 and you're like, it's not that much, but 5, that's a lot of bullets, man. Like, let me see if I can get the numbers up. Like, how many bullets it actually is. Because I don't know if anyone has that listed. Here we go. Yeah, 22 bullets at rank 1 to 30 bullets at rank 3. So that's like 150 damage at rank 3, man. That's a lot of damage, dude. Even at rank 1. I mean, obviously it's a lot more substantial at rank 1, but that's 110 base damage at rank 5. You know, that's a pretty big difference. So yeah, definitely a pretty substantial buff here. I don't know why they seem to think that this is PC. I don't know. We never got the rework evolution that made him more of a dragon laner. So it's interesting to see them specifically talking about dragon lane because I would still think of him more as like a laning ADC as well in his current state. But I guess they like the idea of dragon lane Lucian or Wild Rift. Maybe that's why he's been played the most. I don't know. Nami's been at the top of the support food chain for quite a while. We're looking to bring her down just a touch to let other supports shine. They're small enough to tide away with making it a bit more punishing to fish for picks and should open Nami up to be a bit more vulnerable to all-ins, which should be her primary weakness as a healing enchanter support. So plus 10 seconds every rank on tidal wave. Again, you know, Nami's been pretty present in the meta for a bit. She's been a very solid support, not many weaknesses, very strong laner, very strong scaling. I like that they just hit something that's not super substantial, but will make her noticeably a bit weaker, give other picks a bit more of an opportunity to shine. So yeah, lowering that early tidal wave cooldown, limiting how much playmaking she make within the early game. Pretty good stuff, I think. Tryndamere. Since the release of his rework, Tryndamere's been overperforming in the jungle. We're pulling some of the bonus attack speed gained from his passive to reduce the power of his early ganks and tone down his late game power spike. So just minus 10 to 15% on his passive. Oh, sorry, 5 to 15%. Yeah, down 5 and then down 15%. So basically hitting the late game a lot more than his early ganks necessarily. 5% early game won't be super noticeable, but 15 in the late game is a bit more substantial. Interesting to me. I haven't really seen much Tryndamere jungle myself, but I guess as per usual, probably a bit of a pub stomper, crushing lower level games where there's not as much CC or not as much like cooperation necessarily, and people are just getting kind of like slapped by Tryndamere and run down. So fair enough. Gameplay changes. Items. Black Cleaver. Black Cleaver's been underperforming in comparison to other items like Trinity Force and Death Stance in every slot for most fighters. We don't want to swing too far in the opposite direction, so we're cautiously giving it a light buff. Plus 5 AD. I think it's like the third or fourth time Black Cleaver's got buffed. I don't know. I think the item's in a pretty solid spot. I would say, I don't know, this feels like a little bit of a misinterpretation of stats necessarily. Because obviously Black Cleaver, it's not necessarily like an insane final build item, but what it is it's a much more consistent initial buy. Because 3k, anybody can get 3k by Drake or by the first team fight. 3.4k of Trinity is a little bit more unrealistic. But if you're snowballing and you're able to get a Trinity for a first team fight compared to getting a Black Cleaver, of course that's going to be way stronger, right? Trinity as an item is just probably stronger than Black Cleaver in most scenarios. Black Cleaver's a lot more utility focused, buffing up your teammates' damage as well as your own by shredding their armor, whereas Trinity is a lot more selfish and is a lot stronger as an item, but is more expensive and it's a lot less consistent to finish on that first objective. But I feel like if you look at games where it's like, oh, this person built Trinity first, a lot of those games could be really skewed because like it depends on the timing of their Trinity, right? Like, of course, Black Cleaver isn't necessarily going to snowball as hard, but it's the more consistent option. You know, it's a little bit like tankier, a little bit easier to build. Gives you like similar like stats wise, I guess, at least as far as like ignoring the Sheen proc, you know, the Phage utility and all this, but it also gives you that like the utility of the armor shred. But the main boon is that, yeah, it's like a 3k item, which is really consistent for the first team fight, the first dragon. I don't know if it needs to necessarily be as good as Trinity Force, you know? Like, Trinity Force is a really greedy choice that's like hard to get to. Death Stance isn't even really the same as these items. You kind of build both on most champions, like Death Stance plus Black Cleaver, like for Riven, for example, or Trinity Force plus Death Stance on Camille Fiora. I just think these two items aren't necessarily one-to-one. It's weird for me to like necessarily to say they compare to them. And then when you say like, yeah, Black Cleaver underperforms compared to Trinity Force, well, yeah, that's because Trinity Force, you know, when you get it, if you get it at the same pace as Black Cleaver, of course it's way stronger because it's a more expensive item and it has, you know, it's way better for dueling and all this, you know. I say they don't necessarily fill the exact same identity, and I think it would be dangerous to make Black Cleaver as strong as Trinity Force all the time because Trinity Force is meant to be that greedier, selfish carry option compared to Black Cleaver kind of being stable, consistent, able to purchase every game, helps out my team, that kind of thing, you know. So I don't think they need to fill the same identity. But, you know, this change might not be too drastic, so it's probably fine. Last Whisper and its upgrades offer extremely powerful anti-armor itemization for physical damage carries. While this is their intended output, they are currently so effective at their purpose that tank defenses are being invalidated by penetration even relatively early in the game. We are reducing the efficiency of these items, particularly Immortal Reminder, and adding per-level scaling to the armor penetration to assure that tanks have a sufficient window of time to use their defenses before carriers scale into a place to cut them down. So minus 5% base on Last Whisper, pretty substantial. You'll probably go, what's it called? Coolfield's Warhammer? If you're building Sirota first now, no point building for 10% armor pen, it's not a huge amount. Now the armor penetration on Immortal Reminder scales, and for Sirota's Grudge, scales 16 to 30% based on champion level. Mortal Rider's losing 5 damage, and it's getting a bit more expensive, up to 3100. Soroda's also going up to 3100, getting plus 100 combined cost. But this armor penetration scaling is the big change. This mainly hits champions that love to go like Soroda second. So I'm thinking like Zed, Varus, like these kind of champs. They've been loving the Soroda second build. Getting a really early Sorodas, you get this insane amount of percent pen, which is really effective even that early in the game, as they say. And you get this really great slow effect, you get CDR. It's just so many amazing stats for them. And it's really effective damage-wise, like more effective than other options. This probably stamps that out. 16% is way less effective than 30, obviously. You probably still get Sorodas / Mortal third on most champs, which you should do on most AD champions, because that's around the break point of armor penetration being very valuable, just based off base armor. But now the scaling should match that about the same, you know, once you get to like, I guess, you know, I mean, I'm assuming that it's like literally practically 1% per level, right? Because it's 16 to 30, depending on level. I mean, I don't know what the exact scaling is. It would be nice if they mentioned it. But if we assume it's like, you know, 0.9 per level, then, you know, at level 10, you're getting 25%. That's pretty reasonable. That's about your third item, you know, level 10 to 12. And so at that point, it's pretty effective to get the armor pen. So you'll probably definitely still build a third item with most champions that are AD focused, just because of natural base armor. It's just the most efficient purchase you can make, but it does cut out those like second line Soroda. It's very effective, gets a bunch of utility, gives a bunch of damage, and was just like probably just too strong in general. So this is a pretty solid change overall to kind of snap out those builds. Nice enough to Varus as well, because yeah, I think Varus was a big abuser of this like mana immune into Soroda build. It was just doing insane damage, had insane utility because it provided a huge slow to his piercing arrow, and you know, it gave him CDR and everything he wanted, so it was just really strong. Force of Nature, magic resistance choices for tanks are not quite sufficient when tanks are dealing with significant magic damage threats. We're buffing up the magic resistance on Spirit Visage and Force of Nature slightly to make them more powerful when dealing with magic damage, particularly enemy compositions with multiple threats. Plus 5 MR on both of these. Yeah, pretty fine change, fulfills what they're saying, and yeah, that's the free-to-play champion rotations. So that's 2.5A. Overall, yeah, I like this patch a lot. I think it's hit a fair few meta staples. You know, Galio Darius, really strong for a while. Graves even has been fairly present. Kai'Sa, Nami, like I think it's hit a fair few meta champs. Would like to see Ziggs get nerfed, but you know, we can't all expect a miracle to happen. But yeah, overall, pretty exciting patch. Definitely makes me pretty excited for the Horizon Cup, seeing what kind of meta the teams, you know, come up with. But yeah, overall, hope you guys enjoyed this review. I'm super excited for Jace as well. Can't wait. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, make sure to leave a like. It really helps out the channel. You can also subscribe for more content like this. And yeah, I'll see you guys on the next patch. Hope you have a great rest of your day. I'll catch you next time. Peace.